Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Vallabha Radha Vallabha Radhe Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Vasudevaya. Om Akyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Buddham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhantamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patiyanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. We would like to welcome all of you all to the second day of our seminar. Today we are going to discuss this subject, which is getting relationships right. So just to give you the context of today's talk, I recently wrote a book called as Open-Eyed Meditations. Now, when I wrote that book and so many devotees happened to see it, they got completely bewildered by the title, because ISKCON is not into meditation so much. And I'm talking about open-eyed meditation, which is even more bewildering. Essentially, this book is, I'll tell you what the title means, and then you will get the context. There is a term in Sanskrit which is called as Shastra Chakshu. Shastra Chakshu essentially means seeing the world through the eyes of the scriptures. In English, that's what open-eyed meditations means, in essence. So that means whatever I was trying to see, whatever I was observing in the life of devotees, I tried to see it through the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. And I really found something very, very interesting, that practically every aspect of life, whether it is relationships, whether it is leadership, whether it is dealing with success or failures, embarrassments, practically every aspect of, including shopping, there are understandings of it from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So what I'm going to present today, specifically based on relationships, is based on this particular book. The whole understanding is, you'll find as we discuss the whole aspect of relationships, that these scriptures have some really amazing wisdom to contribute to our personal lives. Now, all of us are trying to practice Krishna consciousness, are trying to be devotees in our personal lives. But the fact is that I know for sure that devotees go through immense amount of challenges in relationships. Not just on a personal family front, but also within the devotee community. So many challenges just because the false ego is involved all the time. And wherever false egos meet, there are going to be clashes, So here is something that might help you all a little bit in your different relationships that you may have in your life. What I'm going to speak today is going to be principles of relationships. And these principles are applicable no matter what the relationship is. Whether it is friendship, whether it is colleagues in an organization, whether it is relationship with your family, with your spouse, with your children, with your parents. At all levels, these concepts or principles work. The true test of a ship is not how good it looks in the dock, but how well it can handle a storm. If you want to know how good a ship is, don't go to the docks. See how it performs in a storm. Similarly, to know how good a relationship is, this is a bigger ship, Don't look at Instagram and Facebook. Relationships that look good on Instagram and Facebook need not necessarily be actually good. How good a relationship is depends on how do you deal with conflicts, fights, differences that invariably arise in the relationship. When the conflict does happen, do you yell at the other person, or do you use the conflict as an opportunity to understand one another better? So, in essence, there are 5 very important principles or sutras to make any relationship work. And if you know these 5 sutras, you don't need to know really anything else about relationships. But unfortunately, these 5 sutras are such powerful things. To be able to actually put them into practice, it will take lifetimes. So in essence, the essence of the seminar is these 5 things I'm going to share. First is appreciate the good. Second is encourage the potential. The third is respect the difference. The fourth is tolerate the unchangeable. And finally, forgive the mistakes. If somebody can do these 5 things, any relationship can work wonderfully. But unfortunately, how to do these 5 things is the complication, is the difficulty. And therefore, we have a 2-hour seminar for that. The Indian culture, the Vedic culture specifically, everything that we need to know is there in the form of simple stories. Some of the most simplest stories can actually reveal solutions to some of the most complicated problems of life. And therefore, I'm going to share a lot of stories through this session. And you'll find these stories are just so amazing. It's entertaining, at the same time enlightening. One time, Shivaji Maharaj, I'm not sure how many of you all know Shivaji. Shivaji was one of the most powerful kings of the Maharashtrian Empire. Practically built an entire nation. So, at some point in Shivaji's life, he was running away to save his life literally from Aurangzeb, just escaped from Aurangzeb's prison. And he was running through the forest path. Naturally, because he was running away, he was not really dressed in a kingly dress. He was like quite in a shabby situation. And as he was running away, he naturally was hungry and thirsty. He came across a small house, knocked at the door. He wanted some food. There was an old lady there, and he asked her, "Can you give me some food?" The old lady welcomed him, made him sit down, and she began to serve him. She put a banana leaf, a plantain leaf in front of him, and she first served him rice, hot rice, and then she began to pour hot dal on it. And interestingly, Shivaji Maharaj, he was a king, he didn't really know how to handle this banana leaf eating business. If you don't know how to eat in a banana leaf, you can really mess it up. So as the dal began to pour on the rice, dal began to flow all over, and he was just panicking how to manage the dal. And this old lady, illiterate old lady, made a comment. She just passed a comment. And that comment became the foundation of Shivaji Maharaj's empire. You know what she said? She said, "You're eating like Shivaji Maharaj rules his kingdom." She didn't know he was Shivaji. She just passed a comment. You're eating just like Shivaji Maharaj is ruling his kingdom. Shivaji Maharaj began to look at her, wondering what she's talking about. And then she gave a purport. She said, if you want to prevent the dal from flowing out, first make a boundary. So Shivaji Maharaj is conquering, he's expanding his kingdom without making a boundary. Therefore, he's losing everything. That wisdom of this old lady became the foundation of Shivaji Maharaj's empire, practically. You can imagine what kind of wisdom is there in this land. The Vedic culture has some solid wisdom to offer us. And unfortunately, this wisdom is hidden in some very simple but yet deep stories. The first thing that I would like to share with you all when it comes to relationships is something that is interesting. One of the greatest enemies for relationships is talent. In fact, talented people are sometimes the most lonely people in the world. And talent is good enough to deal with the world. But good attitude is needed or important to deal with your world. Talent is useful in handling things and projects, but good attitude is important to handle people and relationships. Talent is like rain given by God. You can't, become talented. You are talented. We just have certain facilities that is given by God. But attitude is like a farm that is cultivated by a farmer. So essentially, in the Mahabharata, there are two people, Karna and Arjun. Both highly talented people, probably equally talented people. But Krishna chooses Arjun over Karna, not because he was more talented, but because he has good attitude, along with talent. Success did not make Arjun boast, and failure did not make him lament. On the other hand, Karna, he boasted at every instance about his superior skills and lamented at every opportunity about his inferior birth. And therefore, Karna used to use talent as a means to shield his insecurities. So generally, a talented person, he is bound by the ropes of what is known as perfectionism. And if he comes across some embarrassment, which naturally happens at some point of time, in spite of his unlimited amount of talent, he just shrivels up when he goes through an embarrassment in life. Just like in the Mahabharata, we find Duryodhana, highly talented person, but when he fell into that pool of water, mistaking it to be a land, and people laughed at him. He just didn't know how to handle it. He became so frustrated, he practically lost his whole mind. Krishna assisted Arjun with his talent, but along with talent, Krishna also assisted Arjun to develop the right attitude. Talent is not enough. Beyond a certain level, talent is one of the most useless things you can have in life. Let me repeat that again. Beyond a certain level, talent is one of the most useless things you can have in life. Because talent can help you solve many problems of life. Talent can help you open the first door to success. It can help you open the second door to success. But it can never help you open the final door to success. Because the final door to success is opened by good attitude. When they hire people, I was told in the Australian army, there's one of the criteria that is looked upon is whether you have ever had an academic failure in your life. And if you have not had an academic failure, they don't hire you. Am I right? You know why? What is the background behind this? The understanding is, if you face your first failure in war, you don't know how this fellow will react, how this fellow will handle it. So for people who are highly talented, but who don't have the right attitude in life, talent tends to cripple a person. I know so many people from highly educated backgrounds, naturally highly talented. But when it comes to relationships, the talent messes up the relationship so badly. Let me give you two examples, live examples. There was one family, husband and wife, they came to me once and they said, we are just frustrated with one another. They were done. We don't want to continue this relationship. I said, what happened? Just to give you a background, the husband was a pass out from IIT, IIM. IIT is, the topmost technical degree in India, and IIM is the topmost managerial degree in India. So if you have a combination of IIT, IIM, you are like God only, practically in India. People actually treat you like God. This man had both. And then his wife, she was a pass out from one of the best management institutes in ISB in Hyderabad. Highly talented people. But they just couldn't get along with one another. I asked them, what's the problem? You know what the wife told me? The wife said, my husband, for him, everything is an Excel sheet. Whatever I do for him, he writes it down in Excel sheet. And then he puts a tick. And then he does the exact same thing for me, and he writes it down and he puts a tick. So if I smile at him, he puts a tick. And he also smiles at me. If I get something for his mother, he also gets something for my mother and puts a tick. So practically our life has become an Excel sheet. I said, wow, what a problem this is. This is the problem with talent. Highly talented people, but when it comes to relationships, the talent fails miserably. And therefore, talent is God-given. One should be humble about it. Fame is man-given. One should be grateful about it. And egotism is self-given. One should be careful about it. When it comes to relationships, one of the most important aspects of relationships is having the right attitude. And what is the meaning of having the right attitude? It's about understanding one another. A talented person is always talking about himself. But when it comes to good attitude, one should look beyond oneself. Here's another story from India, from the life of Tukaram Maharaj. Tukaram is one of the most famous saints in Maharashtra. And he was a very simple man. So one day he was guarding a farm, and then the farmer, very happy with him, he gave him 15 sugarcane sticks as a reward for his duty. So Tukaram Maharaj took these 15 sugarcane sticks and he was going back home. On the way, there were small children that kept pestering Tukaram Maharaj for those sugarcane sticks. So he kept giving away. And by the time he reached home, he had only one stick left, And he gave that one stick to his wife. And so here, I earned this for you. His wife was so frustrated. Because this man, he was a great devotee, but he had no idea how to earn money. And whatever he earned also, he would just give away like this, Out of sheer frustration, that wife took the sugarcane stick and hit it on his head. I mean, imagine if it was somebody else in place of Tukaram Maharaj. A good reason for divorce, Today's world is love at first sight and divorce at first fight, So Tukaram Maharaj, what he did? He did something very interesting. When that sugarcane stick was hit on his head, it broke into two pieces. He took the two pieces, he gave one piece to his wife and kept one for himself. And he said, one for you, one for me. That was the end of the fight. So essentially, the point I'm trying to say is that what talent can't do, good attitude can do. The second thought, which is a very important thought that one should have, is generally, how do relationships work? Many of the relationships work when each person involved in the relationship is not focusing on self-praise or not talking about himself all the time. One of the very important tips how to become infamous in a relationship is keep speaking about yourself. There are so many people who just love to speak about themselves all the time. I mean, how long can you hear about one person? At some point you get frustrated, right? These people are called as Superman or Superwoman, you know. They just seem to be knowing all solutions to all problems of life. They just seem to be always right. They can never be wrong. So, when a person carries a mask of perfection, then people reject him. Human beings want to connect with other human beings who are imperfect. The moment you try to show that you are perfect, people can't handle you. Because you think you are perfect, but not everybody thinks you are perfect, right? So essentially, perfection has nothing to do with greatness. In fact, those who are aspiring for greatness love imperfections. And therefore, from dealing with imperfections come greatness. So every person who tries to project himself as perfect is actually wearing a mask, hiding his imperfections. In the Ramayana, we find that Ravan was a person who could never accept no as an answer. I mean, if he tells anything, you have to always say yes only. Ravan went to Marich, his own uncle, and he wanted Marich's help to assist him kidnap Sita. The moment Marich heard the word Ram, Marich started trembling in fear. Marich told Ravan, "You have no idea who Ram is." And he said, "I'll explain to you. I had 3 experiences with Ram, and all of them have been highly dangerous." The first experience was Ram was a 12-year-old boy, and he shot me with one arrow, and I landed 800 miles into the ocean. Marich fell in an island today known as Mauritius. You know. It's named after Marich, Mauritius. You know. Even today, Ramayana is very famous over there. Marich did a lot of preaching, I guess. So the second time when Ram met Marich was Marich and 2 of his friends. They were disguised as carnivorous deers. And they were in the forest roaming around, and they would surprise sages and eat them up, basically. And they saw Ram Lakshman dressed as sadhus, dressed as ascetics. So the moment Marich saw Ram, he felt, now I can take revenge because he has become a sadhu. And people sometimes mistake what the portfolio and profile of sadhus are. They can be highly dangerous people sometimes. So Marich and 2 of his friends started running to Ram to kill Ram and Lakshman. And as they began to run, Ram started shooting arrows. And as soon as Marich saw the arrow of Ram coming, he ran backwards, you know. And the 2 friends died, of course. Marich told Ravan, that day I took a vow. He said, I will never ever face Ram in my life. And this fellow, he became so scared of life, he actually took sannyas. He wore the saffron dress, you know. Voluntarily, he didn't have any guru. His mind was the only guru. Voluntarily took sannyas and he went and sat in a forest. So Marich said, from that day, the moment I hear the word Ra, anything with the word Ra, I start getting scared, you know. So Ratna, Ratha, even if I hear the word Ravan, you know, the moment Ra is there, I start trembling. Is that much I have fear of Ram, he said. So Ravan, he was not somebody who could take no for an answer. For him, calling his plan as imperfect is as good as calling him imperfect. So Ravan, he said, he gave him an option. Either you assist me, help me, or you die. So essentially, when one is obsessed about always being right, he has given up his right of being wrong. Human beings can be wrong, and imperfection is something that can come in every human being. In fact, should be there in every human being. Duryodhan in the Mahabharata, he would consider himself to be Mr. Perfect. In fact, he considered himself to be so perfect that he wouldn't allow anybody above him to dictate him. And he was so obsessed with nothing being above him, even in the scorching sun, he would not allow an umbrella to be held above him. Can you imagine? Nothing above me. I'll suffer, no problem, but nothing above me. So essentially, this idea of being perfect is like being a Superman. There are many people in this world who love to be Superman or Superwoman. That means these people, they have answers to all problems. They can solve any problem. In fact, they will solve a problem before understanding the problem only. Just imagine you go to a doctor and you just enter the clinic, the doctor is okay, malaria, go. You first understand my problem. There was one man who went into a hotel and he asked the waiter in the hotel, do you have any solutions for hiccups? The waiter said, wait a minute. He bent down, picked up a mop that was lying down. He hit this fellow on his face. Dah! This fellow said, why did you hit me? He said, see, hiccup is gone. This man said, I didn't have hiccup. My wife was sitting in the car outside has it. These are typically people who give a solution before understanding the problem. I'm sure you must have understood by now who are the Superman, Superwoman in your life. And there are so many of them who just seem to be always perfect. When it comes to relationships, people don't really want solutions to the problems of life. You know what they want? They want to be understood. Human beings don't seek solutions to the problems of life. They come with the hope that you will understand my problem. In my experience of dealing with people, I deal with thousands of people all the time. One of my experiences in dealing with people is that so many people come to me and share their problems. Sometimes for 1 hour I'm just sitting and hearing them. People end up speaking more than me. I only speak when I sit on the dais like this. But when I'm visiting people, people speak more than me. I just sit and around say listen. And the interesting thing is, after speaking to me 1 hour about their problem, they tell me, thank you very much, Prabhu, you solved our problem. I didn't open my mouth also many times. The understanding is, people don't want solutions from you. They want you to understand their problem. Because not all problems can be solved. Some problems have to be tolerated. And some problems have to be neglected. Very few problems can actually be solved. Why do human beings have 2 ears and 1 mouth? So that you speak less and hear more. But unfortunately, we end up speaking more and hearing less. And therefore, we just don't understand one another. We just don't communicate with one another. It said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The question is, when it comes to communication, when it comes to understanding, the most important aspect of understanding is hearing, listening to one another. When we learn communication skills in schools and colleges, most of the times when it comes to communication skills, we are taught reading skills, we are taught speaking skills, we are taught writing skills. Seldom, very, very rarely you find people, the schools and colleges teaching us listening skills. The most important part of communication is listening, and unfortunately, we just don't have any training to listen. Our ears are always open, our mouth at least closes sometimes. We are supposed to have more expertise in hearing than in speaking. Unfortunately, we have no training in listening. And therefore, there are 5 types of listening. 5 types of listening skills. The first type of listening is known as spaced out listening. Spaced out listening means you're physically here, but mentally not here. I'm not sure how many of you all are doing that right now. Spaced out listening. Maybe sitting on the Eiffel Tower and thinking what am I doing here in this class? So there are some people who do this spaced out listening. There are some people who do what is known as pretend listening. Like typically, a small child comes to his father, telling about the school activities. The father is reading a newspaper, and he pretends as if he's listening. He tells the child, okay, tell me what happened. The child is talking. The father is saying, continue. Yeah. the child is saying, "You're not listening to me." He said, "No, I'm listening very attentively. Continue. This is pretend listening. You're not really listening at all. The third type of listening is known as selective listening. Selective listening essentially means don't worry about the picture. Selective listening essentially means that you listen to only that much which you want to listen to. Like one fellow, he used to go to a mosque very regularly to attend namaz and all. One time he just stopped coming. So the Maulvi, he was very concerned, why is this person not coming? Very few people come regularly. So the Maulvi went to this fellow's house to find out why he stopped coming. When he went to this fellow's house, so he asked him, why you stopped coming? He said, I read in the Quran it is written one should not go to the mosque. This Maulvi got a shock of his life. He said, how is it possible that it can be written in the Quran? Show me the Quran. This guy opened the Quran and showed him that page. It's written, one should not go to the mosque. This person was totally bewildered because he read the Quran so many times, never he came across this sentence. Then he read carefully and he realized this sentence was the last sentence in that page. One should not go to the mosque. And in the next page it continued, without washing one's hands and legs. This fellow only read that part and stopped reading further. This is known as selective listening. That means I will listen to only those things that I would like to listen to. Then there is something known as self-centered listening. Self-centered listening essentially means that you put yourself in the center of the whole thing. And you listen to words, you listen to, whatever is being spoken from the point of view of your center, from the point of view of how is it going to affect you. The last type of listening, which is the most important type of listening, which unfortunately no one practices, is known as empathic listening. Empathic listening means you don't listen only to the words. You listen to the intention behind the words. You listen to the deeper understanding behind the words. When people speak something in the form of words, the words are not so important. We need to understand what they are feeling when they speak. You should understand what they are going through. That's why empathic listening essentially means putting yourself in the shoes of the other person while speaking. And that is the deepest type of communication, listening. A very important thing that every human being should know about people is that humans are neither good nor bad. They are simply helpless byproducts. They behave helplessly based on the way they are treated. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you have dealt with cats enough, but you'll understand this if you have dealt. If you rub a cat on its back, the cat will feel very nice. It will meow nicely, it will feel very, very nice. But the same cat, if you rub it on its stomach, it will bite you. It will scratch you, it will attack you. Don't try it, but it's a fact. So the question is, how does the same cat behave nicely when you rub it on the back, and when you rub it on the stomach, it attacks you? That's how the preferences are, that's how the natures are. In the Mahabharata, there are two stories of the same person, about the same person. There's a story of Arjun when he went to the heavenly planets. He met a man whose name was Chitrasen. Chitrasen was a Gandharva in the heavenly planets. And Chitrasen was an amazing singer, amazing dancer, musician. And when Arjun heard him singing, Arjun was really impressed. He went and appreciated Chitrasen like anything. He glorified Chitrasen like anything. And Chitrasen was so touched by Arjun's genuine appreciation that he told Arjun that I'll teach you everything about music. And he actually taught him musical instruments, he actually taught him to sing, he actually taught him to dance, and they became the best of friends. And Arjun in turn taught him martial arts, he taught him using weapons, he gave him all the knowledge that he had. The same Chitrasen, much later, when he came to the earth planet, he came across Duryodhan in the forest. There was a forest known as Dvaitavan, where Duryodhan had gone to camp along with his people. He had gone for a picnic. But interestingly, he chose the picnic spot in Dvaipavan exactly opposite the hermitage of the Pandavas. I mean, the forest is such a huge place. He could have chosen any place as picnic spot. But he purposely, decided to camp outside the Pandavas to make them, feel very bad. See, he's enjoying so much and we are suffering, A person who's envious is not satisfied if his enemy is in a loss. His satisfaction comes when he sees the eyes of the enemy suffering. So Duryodhana was not enough. The Pandavas were in miserable situation. He wanted them to see him enjoy. That's what would give him joy. So he actually went to Dvaipavan with that plan. But Chitrasen happened to be there. And when he realized Duryodhana's intention, Chitrasen went to Duryodhana and told him, don't camp over here. Go somewhere else. I'm already having a picnic here with my people. Duryodhana said, nothing doing. This forest belongs to my father. Dhritarashtra. He said, I'll do whatever I want. And both of them picked up a fight. And it became such an intense fight that practically Duryodhana's entire army was wiped out. And all his best friends left, Karna and Shakuni, all of them ran away. And this man was left alone, and Chitrasen tied him up like an animal. So the same Chitrasen behaved very nicely with Arjun, and the same Chitrasen behaved very badly with Duryodhana. Why? Because of the way he was treated. One person treated him with respect and appreciation. Another person treated him with, disrespect and fighting against him. The Mahabharata talks about 3 types of nitis. Nitis are principles. First type of niti is known as Brihaspati niti. Yudhishthira Maharaj followed Brihaspati niti very meticulously. Brihaspati niti says, no matter what, you always follow the path of dharma. That means no matter what, you always do good only. Even if others do bad, no problem, you do good. And Duryodhana was taught by Shakuni to follow the second type of niti, which is known as Kanika niti. Kanika niti says, hook or crook, get your work done. Now in front of Kanika niti, how can Brihaspati niti survive? So the Pandavas are going through so many crises, one after another, because they are dealing with a totally different type of niti. That is the time Krishna came into their life and introduced a third type of niti in their life, which is known as Shukra niti. Shukra niti says, if your enemy follows the path of dharma, you follow it. If the enemy breaks the path of dharma, you also break. So the moment the Pandavas started following the Shukra niti that Krishna taught them, their life became peaceful and Duryodhana started having problems. Consciously or unconsciously, all of us follow Shukra niti in our life with people around us. If people behave good with us, we behave good with them. If people behave bad with us, we behave bad with them. And therefore, human beings are not good nor bad. They behave, they respond according to the way in which they are dealt. And therefore, we need to understand that before we decide to say this person is good or this person is bad, you first need to examine how you are behaving with them. Maybe their badness is triggered by your behavior. That's why you'll find some people extremely good with others, but when it comes to you, they are so horrible. And you wonder, what's wrong? Why is this person behaving so badly with me? Because with everybody else, he seems to be having good relationships, right? There was once a man who went to a jewelry shop. And in the jewelry shop, he found a small jewel. There were many other jewels which were shining, very costly jewels. And there was one particular jewel which was very pale. But even that particular stone was very costly. He didn't understand why that stone is so costly. He went and asked the jeweler, such a pale and dull stone, why is it so costly? And the jeweler gave him a very interesting answer. The jeweler said, this stone is a very special stone which is known as the opal. The opal is known as a sensitive jewel. He took the opal, the stone, and put it on his hand. It was pale. Then he covered his other hand over this hand for a few seconds. And then when he opened it, that stone also started shining brilliantly. And this jeweler said the property of the opal is that when it is given warmth, it begins to shine. Human beings are like the opal. When they are given warmth and affection, they begin to show their good qualities to others. But when they're treated very badly, they begin to, show, they just become dull people. You just don't want to be with them. And therefore, it is very important to understand how to deal with people. There is something very important that all of us need to know as devotees, as human beings. Many times, when it comes to important relationships of life, we don't speak things that we want to say. We just suppress it. We know we want to say something, but we don't say it all the time. We suppress it. Why do people suppress things? Especially when it comes to important relationships. Why don't we speak up everything? There are 4 reasons why people choose to suppress their emotions, suppress their feelings. The first reason is there's a lack of courage, thinking that I may be judged by the other person if I speak up. The second thing is that you don't want to hurt the person you love so much. The third thing is that we think that expression is a sign of weakness. And the fourth thing is that we want to retain a goody image of ourselves. Therefore, we just suppress within us. If you have seen a dam that holds water, the water keeps pounding on the dam. Dha, dha, dha. At a certain point, if the dam becomes weak, the water one bang and the whole dam collapses. So for people who are suppressing their emotions, suppressing their feelings, they just don't speak it up. It's like a dam. One day it will burst. Just like suppression is like putting a scratch on your lens. One scratch, not so much a problem. 2 scratches. So every time you suppress, it's like putting 1 scratch on the lens of relationships. The more scratches you put, one day will come that there are so many scratches you can't see only anything. The relationship becomes very blur. One who suppresses emotions, he loses peace of mind. Just like, I'm sure all of you have had this experience. If there's a food particle stuck in your teeth, can you be peaceful? Till that thing comes out, you'll be doing something or other, You just cannot be peaceful only. When you suppress your feelings, it's like that. There's something stuck. You don't want to speak. You don't want to take it out, So suppression leads to depression initially and explosion finally. In the Mahabharata, Krishna understood the mood of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari after the war got over. After the war got over, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they were staying with the Pandavas. But they were highly frustrated people. But they were not speaking out their frustration, they were not removing their frustration. They were suppressing it and keeping. Krishna realized, till these 2 people don't express, they will remain frustrated. And actually it damaged them only. So Krishna went to Dhritarashtra and he told Dhritarashtra, here is Bhima. Please bless him. Now, that whole frustration that was building up inside Dhritarashtra, the moment he heard the word Bhima in front of him, it just bursted out. He said, I want to embrace Bhima. And Krishna pushed the iron statue of Bhima in front of Dhritarashtra. And this man, he embraced the iron statue of Bhima, thinking it is Bhima, and he crushed it. He had the power of 10,000 elephants. He crushed the iron statue to powder, literally. And after completely crushing it, he said, oh, what I have done, I have killed Bhima. Krishna said, don't worry, he's still here. So once he expressed completely, he became peaceful. Same thing with Gandhari. Gandhari was suppressing all that frustration so much. And then she was actually going to curse Yudhishthir Maharaj. But Krishna came in between and took the entire frustration of Gandhari on himself. Gandhari cursed Krishna that his whole Yadu dynasty will get destroyed. But once she expressed, she immediately became peaceful. So the flips. So now, when it comes to expression, there is a problem. People confuse frankness with bluntness. Now you need to express, definitely, but express how? If suppression is like committing suicide, wrong expression is like cold-blooded murder. If suppression is like drinking poison, wrong expression is like throwing acid. So by suppressing, you hurt yourself, and by wrong expression, you hurt the relationship itself. In the Mahabharata, we find Yudhishthira Maharaj when he became the emperor, performed the Rajasuya Yajna, Duryodhana couldn't handle his wealth. Yudhishthira Maharaj became so powerful. And when Duryodhana went to the Rajasuya Yajna and came back, he was a highly frustrated person. But he was a highly expressive person. He would not hold anything in his heart. So now people might say, Hare, Duryodhana is good. At least he's not suppressing his emotions. He's expressing. But what kind of expression he was doing? He was so explosive. He started telling his father, I will not get peace unless I get that property. I get all that wealth. I get that power. I want to get what the Yudhishthira has. Fully expressed himself. But this is known as wrong expression. So, between hurtfully suppressing and wrongfully expressing is the solution. So many people think that if I suppress, then problems will be solved. Many people think that if I fully express, then problems will be solved. But both are highly dangerous if you don't know how to express rightly. Suppression is like lifting a carpet and putting all the dust inside the carpet. If you want to clean the room, there are two ways to clean the room. You clean it properly, and the shortcut way is remove the carpet and put the dust inside. The room seems clean. But the day you remove the carpet, the whole room is dirty. So suppression is like that. You keep hiding all your emotions, That fellow said like this, and that fellow said like that. You keep hiding it within. And one day will come, you will start removing all the frustration out. 2013, March 23rd, you said this to me. 2014, March 15th, you saw me like that. I mean, this is the problem with suppression, People just suppress and keep inside, and the day it blasts out, the relationship dies completely. Both are dangerous. And therefore, the solution is what is known as right expression. In the Mahabharata, we find, just like Duryodhana was expressive, so was Bhima. Bhima was also a highly expressive person. Like when Yudhishthira lost Draupadi in the gambling match, Bhima exploded. He expressed himself frankly. He started saying, give me that hand that played gambling. I want to put burning coal on that hand. I want to burn your hand. He was telling Yudhishthira like this. Can you imagine? So Bhima was very frank in his expression. So how is this right expression? The moment Bhima said this, after he spoke, he went and begged forgiveness to Yudhishthira. He saved the relationship. Because when he spoke that, he didn't really mean that. His frustration came out in the form of those words. So essentially, suppression is like a time bomb. Blast someday. And right expression is like a Diwali cracker. It blasts today, but it doesn't do any harm. So in suppression, you may not hear a blast immediately. But when it happens, there will be no ear left only. It happens so badly. But in right expression, you may hear a loud blast now, but it is harmless. Therefore, for relationships to actually survive, to last, what is more important than just suppressing it is rightly expressing it. And what is the way to rightly express? When it comes to relationships, one of the most important qualities one needs to enhance a relationship, this is known as a magic carpet of relationships, to take the relationship very high, is known as appreciation. But unfortunately, many people don't understand this word appreciation at all. In my programs in Bombay, I used to have monthly birthday celebrations. And when we used to have birthday celebrations, what I would do was, whoever birthday was there, I would call his friend or relative, somebody close to him or her, in front, and ask that person to appreciate that birthday boy or girl. I'll tell you, people would struggle so badly. They will take the mic and keep staring, What do I say? One boy, when it was his mother's birthday, I told him, speak some appreciation of your mother. He thought for 5 minutes. And he said, sorry, I don't have anything to say. And he walked away. People struggle a lot to appreciate one another because to appreciate is an art. So appreciation is not just words, lip talk. When it comes to Vaishnava dealings, appreciation can be very, very badly used actually in Vaishnava dealings. Devotees can really appreciate you like crazy. So, Prabhuji, you're Krishna only for me, What do you mean by that? So people just go, they just can say anything and they don't mean it at all, by the way. They just don't mean it at all, but they want to say something. So there is a difference between appreciation and flattery. Flattery is just lip talk. Appreciation, it involves many organs of the body. Your eyes need to observe. Your mind and intelligence needs to analyze. Your heart really needs to feel. And then your mouth needs to speak. That's what is called appreciation. So appreciation should be continuously done, constantly done, constructively done, contemplatively done, and consciously done. That's when it really becomes appreciation. And when you appreciate another person, when you flatter somebody, you just boost the ego. But when you appreciate somebody, you really encourage. You really touch the heart. Appreciation is not a tactic to win hearts, but it is a culture to retain hearts. If you study all the scriptures, all the Vedic scriptures, just study them nicely. There is something very interesting that we seldom observe. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is addressing Arjun, he calls Arjun by different names. Sometimes he calls him as Gudakesha, the one who has conquered sleep. Sometimes he calls him as Savyasachi, the one who is ambidextrous, he can fight with both hands. Sometimes he calls him as Dhananjaya, the conqueror of wealth. So he calls him by different names. And when Arjun calls Krishna, he calls Krishna by different names. He calls him as Madhusudan, he calls him as Govinda, so many names. Why? Why are these people calling one another by different names? Very simple. By taking one another's different names, they're actually appreciating one another's different qualities. So every time Arjun is calling Krishna Madhusudan, he's appreciating one quality of Krishna. Every time Krishna is calling Arjun Gudakesh, he's appreciating one quality of Arjun. So just by taking names in the Vedic culture, we're appreciating one another. So the whole culture of appreciation has to be something that has to be inbuilt in us. Just like a cow, when it eats grass, the cow is ruminating, thinking. If you observe the face of the cow when it's eating grass, it's really thinking a lot. And then finally the churning comes out in the form of milk, Similarly, one should sufficiently ruminate on others' good qualities. And then a single word of appreciation comes out from the mouth. An ant can appreciate an elephant very easily. Big difference. An eagle can find fault in a sparrow very easily. Big difference. But a honeybee, it's very difficult for a honeybee to find good in another honeybee. Appreciation is very easy with seniors. Vyas Puja of any sannyasi is very easy to perform. So you can speak for hours together. Appreciation or finding faults in a junior very easy. ISKCON is expert in that. Why you didn't pay Dandavat this side? Why you paid that side? Finding faults in people is very easy. In somebody who's new and junior, Finding good in a senior is very easy. But finding good in equals is very difficult. Good in somebody you're all the time with is very difficult. And that's what appreciation really is about. And therefore, it is very, very important that for us to really connect with one another, we learn to appreciate one another. I would like to share a very important aspect of relationships. This aspect of relationship is something that all of us need to really contemplate on. I don't know if you have ever traveled with a cake box in your life. If you travel with a cake box, you'll understand this. Now inside the cake box, which has a creamy cake, it's very delicate. If you shake it a little bit here and there, the cake can stick, and the shape can get destroyed. So you have to be really careful when you're traveling with the cake box. Time and familiarity makes one careless and inattentive. Relationships is like a cake box. Important relationship especially. When you're walking with it, over a period of time, you tend to take things for granted. And then, when familiarity comes, you become very disrespectful towards one another. And the moment you lose respect and care, instantly the relationship breaks. Sometimes, when two countries fight too much, they create a border. They create something known as LOC, line of control. In relationships also, there is a LOC. It is called as LOR, line of respect. The moment you cross that line of respect, relationship breaks. In the Mahabharata, there were two people, Shishupal and Krishna. And they have a very interesting history about, and they were cousin brothers, basically. So when Shishupal was born, he had extra limbs on his body. He had two extra hands, he had an extra leg, he had an extra eye. So one sage told Shishupal's mother, the day somebody picks this boy up and these extra limbs fall apart, that day you understand the person who picks him up will be the cause of his death. And Krishna happened to be Shishupal's cousin brother. And he happened to come to Shishupal's mother's home and he picked up Shishupal. As soon as Krishna picked up Shishupal, the extra limbs fell apart. Shishupal's mother was highly disturbed. She fell at Krishna's feet and she begged him, please don't kill my son. Krishna told her, don't worry. I will give Shishupal 100 chances to make 100 mistakes every time we meet. And if he crosses this LOR, line of respect, then I will kill him. Now, if somebody wants to make mistakes, 100 is quite a good number, right? So Shishupal always kept this in mind. And every time he came in front of Krishna, he would give him 99 bad words. He would keep a count. He had a counter. So we have a counter for counting mala, how many rounds we did. Shishupal had a counting for how many galis he gave. And exactly when he reached 99, he would stop giving bad words. He would continue next time. So one time during the Rajasuya Yajna of Yudhishthira Maharaj, this man became highly disturbed. And he got so disturbed seeing Krishna get that position of receiving the first arghya, the greatest respect that anybody can receive in the universe. Krishna was receiving it. This man, his envy he couldn't contain it. Blasted. Left, right, center, he kept giving bad words to Krishna. Krishna was patiently waiting, but he was counting. This guy lost his count. And the moment he crossed 100, Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra came, cut off the relationship. Cut off this fellow's head forever. All of us, every relationship has a LOR, line of respect. The moment you cross that line of respect, the disk of time will come and sever the relationship forever. In the Ramayana, we find Lakshman Rekha. What is the concept of Lakshman Rekha? Lakshman drew a line around Mother Sita and went. This was LOR. He created a line of respect. And Ravan, the moment he entered into the line of respect, Sita understood that this fellow has wrong intentions. And the moment Ravan tried to cross it, rather he made her cross it, whatever, Sita understood this fellow has wrong intentions. And therefore, love needs respect in the beginning, respect in the middle, but no respect in the end. Disrespectful verbal violence is like a relationship suicide bomber. Most of the times when it comes to very important relationships of life, we don't really understand how much familiarity can lead to disrespect. especially in the Vaishnava community, in the devotee community. Beyond a certain point, when we become very close to one another, we tend to take one another too much for granted. Too much for granted. And devotees do get hurt if they are treated disrespectfully. Not just devotees, practically anybody would get hurt when they are treated disrespectfully. So, a very important concept of relationship which I would like to share with you all is about communication, but at a certain different level. We spoke a little about communication in the past, about listening. Now I'm going to speak about a totally different understanding of communication, which is something that will really touch our hearts. Before you communicate, we have to learn to connect. Today, there are so many ways of communication. Mobile phones, landlines, emails, WhatsApp, what's not, So many things are there. People communicate a lot, but connect seldom. In fact, so many relationships today are getting destroyed because of over-communication. WhatsApp chats. So many relationships getting destroyed. Not because of lack of communication, but because of too much communication. And therefore, it is very important to understand how to communicate with one another in such a way that you actually connect with one another. I'm going to tell you all two stories from the Mahabharata. And when I tell these two stories, you will say, Hare, what is the relationship with communication in these stories? But you understand, there is a very deep relationship. And there is such an amazing understanding in these two stories. The first story is of Krishna and Arjuna during the Mahabharata war, when the day of killing of Jayadratha was taking place. So Arjuna had taken a vow that he will kill Jayadratha by the end of the day, by sunset. And the Kauravas had kept Jayadratha right in the end of their army. So they had to practically cross through an entire army to reach Jayadratha. At that time, Krishna, he was intensely driving the horses, the chariots. At a certain point in the second half, it's quite many hours of fighting, Krishna realized that the horses are getting tired. Krishna told Arjuna, if we continue, the horses will die. We have to take a break. Arjuna, he got off the chariot, he created a wall of arrows. And outside the wall of arrows, Arjuna continued fighting. And inside the wall of arrows, Krishna was taking care of the horses. He was massaging them, he was feeding them grass, he was feeding them water. Can you imagine, in a battlefield, Krishna created a Vrindavan atmosphere. Same role as a coward that Krishna did in Vrindavan, he was doing in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So after the horses were sufficiently nourished, he came out and the fight continued. On another day, this is another part of the story, another story I would say. Karna, he became the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army. The day he became the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army, Karna told Duryodhana, I can easily kill Arjuna, but there is one problem. The problem is that I don't have a chariot driver like Krishna. If I get somebody like Krishna as a chariot driver, I can easily kill Arjuna. Duryodhana was wondering, where do I get somebody like Krishna to be a chariot driver? This is like, small children, when they fail in the exam, you ask them, why you failed? Pen was not good, Some lame answer, So Karna told Duryodhana that there is one person who can drive exactly like Krishna, that is Shalya. Shalya was a king. So Duryodhana said, how can I convince Shalya? Karna said, nothing doing. If Shalya doesn't become a driver, I can't win the war. So Duryodhana went to Shalya and he said, please become driver of Karna. Shalya said, impossible. Duryodhana was begging and pleading, and finally Shalya agreed on one condition. The condition on which he agreed was, I will speak anything I want. Duryodhana said, no problem, as long as you drive, we have no problem what you speak. But that's where the problems began. So as soon as Karna got in the chariot the next day, Karna told Shalya, take me to Arjuna. Shalya said, looks like you want to die today. Karna was so upset, He said, you just continue driving, keep quiet, and you have no understanding. So Shalya was abusing Karna, Karna was abusing Shalya. And can you imagine? They are all both fighting in the intense battle, but they are abusing each other. You know? Shalya told Karna a story. In the middle of the war, storytelling also is going on. Shalya told Karna, he said, I'll tell you a story. He said, there was a crow once. And this crow was a very proud crow, like you. And he said, this crow, he knew 108 ways to fly. And he was showing off, all the birds in the forest. I can fly this way, I can fly backwards, I can fly sidewards. All the birds realized this fellow is a show off. And they said, if you really can fly so much, in all these different patterns, why don't you compete with the swan in flying? And between the two of you all, whoever wins, we'll make that person the king of the birds. The crows had called the swan over here, Then they called the swan. And the competition that was arranged was, they wanted to see who will fly across the ocean. So the swan started flying straight, without any movement, straight it was flying. And the crow was doing all these 108 ways of flying here and there. And finally, after a certain point, the crow was exhausted, And the crow started falling into the water. The swan said, looks like this is the 109th way you're finding her. The crow said, I'm dying, please save me, And finally the crow accepted defeat and came back. So Shalya tells Karna, you're like that crow, only speaks. Arjun does everything, Arjun is like a swan. So Karna was frustrated by this guy. By the time they reached Arjun, and then Karna took he took an arrow, Nagastra, and aimed it at the neck of Arjun. Shalya was a great warrior also himself. Shalya told Karna, don't aim at the neck of Arjun, aim at his chest. Karna said, once I take aim, I don't change it. Shalya said, do you think you're Lord Ram to say that? He said, if you want to survive, you better change your aim. Aim on the chest of Arjun. Karna said no. And he shot the arrow. So when Karna shot the arrow, Krishna realized the arrow is coming, and Krishna realized that Arjun can't do anything to that arrow. Krishna did something very simple. He pressed his feet on the chariot floor. And as soon as Krishna pressed his feet intensely, the horses understood what Krishna wants. And they bent down on their knees. And as soon as the horses sat down on their knees, the arrow just passed above Arjun's head, hit his helmet, and Arjun's life was saved. Shalya told Karna, I told you. The fight continued. But I'll stop the story here. But the essence of the story is just try to understand these two stories. In the first story, so here are two human beings between Shalya and Karna. There are two human beings trying to communicate with one another. But they're speaking the same language, apparently. But they just can't understand what the other person is trying to say. And here is Krishna trying to communicate with the horses. Not even same species in that sense. Not even speaking the same language in that sense. But the horses exactly understood what Krishna is trying to say. Why? Because Krishna understood the language of their needs. The horses understood the language of his needs. This is communication in essence. Before we communicate, learn to connect. And what is the meaning of learning to connect? Learning to connect essentially means try to understand and focus on the other person's need rather than focusing on your own needs. When you try to focus on the other person's need, the other person tries to focus on your need. And then communication happens effectively. So most often, why communication fails between people in all sorts of relationships is because we tend to focus on our own needs first. We tend to focus on our own desires and wants first, rather than focusing on the needs of the relationship. And therefore, it is very important that we try to help one another at that level. I'll share a very, very interesting theme now. This is a theme that I'm going to share 2 or 3 stories over here at this point. A very important story is from the Ramayana. This is one of my favorite stories of the Ramayana. And this is one of the stories about relationships that practically is the most powerful story I've ever heard or read about relationships. The story of the Ramayana, the Ramayana takes place when Ram, Lakshmana and Sita are in the forest. And when the 3 of them are in the forest, this golden deer comes into their life. And when the golden deer comes into the life, Sita, she instantly gets attracted to the golden deer. She tells Ram, please get me this deer. So Ram goes away, but he instructs Lakshman that, take care of Sita, I'll come back. So as Ram is away and Sita is, Lakshman is taking care of her, suddenly they hear the voice of Ram shouting out for help. So essentially this golden deer is a demon named Marich. And he assumes the voice of Ram and he calls out for Sita and Lakshman for help while Marich is dying. So when Sita hears those words, hears Marich's scream in the voice of Ram, she becomes very concerned. She tells Lakshman, go and help your brother. Lakshman is highly confident about Ram. Nothing can happen to Ram. And he tells her, this is not a golden deer, it's a demon named Marich. He tells her also who the demon is. He tells her, don't worry, my brother will come back. Sita is highly concerned about Ram and she's frustrated with the way Lakshman is behaving. Lakshman actually starts laughing. You know why he laughs? He's a guru, right? So Lakshman is thinking, whenever a living entity is in trouble, whenever a human being is in trouble, when living Jivatma is in trouble, he shouts out to God for help. God, please save me. Lakshman is thinking, I have never heard that when God is in trouble, he calls out to living entity. Human being, save me, So here, if Ram is in trouble, why will he call out to me? I am an insignificant person, So Lakshman is, is completely peaceful because he understands, he has great confidence in Ram. Sita is concerned for Ram and Lakshman has confidence on Ram. Essentially, conflicts arise not because two people have two different intentions, but because two people have two different understandings of the same situation. So here, when Sita saw Lakshman, completely complacent, she thought that Lakshman is not interested in helping. And she spoke something that really hurt Lakshman. This section of the story of the Ramayana happens after 13 years of their exile. So for 13 long years, Lakshman has been serving Ram and Sita continuously like a menial servant. For 13 long years, Lakshman has not even slept for one night. When I say he has not slept for one night, it doesn't mean he was sleeping all day long. He was not doing a call center job. He was guarding Sita and Ram all night long, and all day long he was serving them. So 13 long years, Lakshmana sacrificed his wealth, his comforts, his family, his beautiful wife, everything for the sake of these two people. And look at what Sita tells him. Sita tells him that I know why you're here in the forest with us. You're here because you're waiting for an opportunity that Ram goes away so that you can enjoy me. Sita is doubting his character. Can you imagine? Lakshman, when he hears this, he feels so hurt. He tells Sita, I'm going. But I know for sure when I come back, you will not be here. And he goes away. Then he reaches where Ram was. And then Ram asks him, who told you to come here? I told you to guard Sita. Why didn't you listen to me? And then both of them came back and they saw Sita is missing. Ram blasts Lakshman like anything. He says, you are a useless person. You have no competence. The only one thing I told you can't do that much also. Can you imagine? The two people he loved the most. Two people for whom he has sacrificed the most. Two people for whom he has done the most. One is doubting his character and the other is doubting his competence. For somebody whose character and competence are doubted, what is left to survive over there? If anybody else was in Lakshman's place, they would have said, hell with this. Both of you all, I'm going back to Ayodhya, He would have packed up his luggage and gone, I mean, most people, when they go through such times in their lives, they say, hell with the Hare Krishna movement, hell with this, hell with that. They can quit anything. Any relationship get destroyed when such a phase happens. 30 years of relationship can get destroyed in 30 seconds if you don't understand what Lakshman did. What Lakshman did is something that is crucially important for every devotee and every human being to understand. Lakshman did what I call as press the pause button. When Sita spoke those words, Lakshman pressed the pause button. When an action movie is going on and somebody calls you up and you don't want to miss any scene, what do? Press the pause button. Lakshman when Sita spoke those words, he pressed the pause button and he asked himself a question. The question that he asked himself was, does Sita really mean what she spoke? And the answer that he got from within his heart was, no. Sita does not mean what she spoke. Her concern for Ram is coming out in the form of these words. And when Ram spoke those words, again he pressed the pause button. And he asked himself the same question. Does Ram really mean what he spoke? The answer that he got was no. His concern for Sita came out in the form of those words. The question now is, whenever I tell this story, people tell me, Prabhuji, in such situations in life, forget pressing the pause button, we don't know where the remote control is. Somebody gives you such an insulting statement, I mean, where will you search for the remote and press the pause button and all that? The best way, give one slap and finish it off, tit for tat. Try to understand Lakshman's personality in the Ramayana. Lakshman, throughout the Ramayana, was an angry young man. At the drop of the hat, he would get angry. If you study Lakshman's character in the Ramayana. How did that person who was always angry on a regular basis, in such a critical phase of life when he got the biggest insults of his life, did something so amazing? Press the pause button and all. One thought helped Lakshman do what he did. One thought. And this is the one thought that can help us when we come across such situations in life, when we come across such situations in life with the most important relationship of our life. You don't feel so much hurt when somebody who insults you is a stranger. When somebody on the road, the traffic light, he gives you one bad word and goes away. You're not so much disturbed, All day, all night you're thinking about, Hare, usne gali kyun diya mujhe? It doesn't matter if some stranger insults you. But if somebody whom you love the most intimate person, the closest person in your life, if that person insults you, you can't handle it. Right? So Lakshman, what made him press that pause button? There's one thought, as I was saying. The one thought that Lakshman had was, 25 years Sita has deposited love in this relationship. And she made one withdrawal. Should I forget to be grateful for the 25 years of love for this one mistake that she made today? That one thought helped him press the pause button. When Ram spoke those words, the exact same thought. 40 years Ram has deposited love in this relationship. And for the 40 years of love that he has deposited, should I forget to be grateful for that and focus on this one mistake that he made? This one thought of gratitude helped Lakshman press the pause button. All of us in our lives, we will go through phases like this, where the most important relationship of our life is challenged. The question at that point of time we had to ask ourselves is, do we forget the so many years of love that has been deposited in the relationship for this one second? This one thought can help you completely focus on responding. This is what we call the difference between reacting and responding. What we tend to do in life is react. What we need to do in life is respond. The difference between reacting and responding is that in reacting, you do and then think. And in responding, we think and then do. When it comes to important relationships of life, remember, the best way and the most important way to deal with it is to think from the point of view of gratitude. Not all the time we can make changes in how others behave. The quality of my communication with the world outside determines my success. But the quality of my communication with the world inside determines my happiness. I'll tell you a story. There was a lady who was in a supermarket. And this lady was, with her daughter. And this girl, she was crying like mad. She was crying really badly, And the mother, looking at this girl, she was saying, Jennifer, relax. The girl kept crying. The mother is kept telling her, Jennifer, relax. The girl kept crying. The mother said, Jennifer, don't create a scene here. Relax. The girl kept crying. There was an old man who was watching this whole scene. And this old man, he walked up to this lady and he told her, ma'am, I want to say something. Don't you think the language that you're speaking is too high for this girl to understand? Why don't you speak in a language that is simpler? This lady looked at that man and she said, what makes you think that I'm speaking to my daughter? Jennifer is my name. I'm telling myself, Jennifer, relax. So many times, what other people say or do, you have no control of. So the best thing that you can do is, you tell yourself, Jennifer, relax. Next time you're standing in a queue and somebody jumps the queue and goes ahead, rather than getting frustrated and irritated, tell yourself, Jennifer, relax. Next time you're stuck in a traffic jam and, instead of honking all the time and the other fellow in the front can't do anything, tell yourself, Jennifer, relax. Next time a family member is in the toilet and not coming out only, you tell yourself, Jennifer, relax. You go to the Gopal's restaurant or you go to some other restaurant. You go to a restaurant to have a good time with the family. But when people go to a restaurant also, they are in so much anxiety and stress, constantly looking at the door when the waiter will come out and get my order, And finally, after some time, he comes out and gives order to next table. You're frustrated. You tell yourself, Jennifer, relax. So whenever we come across situations in our life where we have no control of, rather than getting reactive, frustrated, we have to learn to become responsive. We have to learn to respond. Especially when it comes to important relationships of life, this one thought of gratitude will help us actually relax. When it comes to relationships, the most important relationships of life have to be dealt with very carefully. And especially when it comes to relationship with devotees. First of all, it is not at all easy to get good relationships in this world. And when you do get good relationships in this world, it is not easy to keep them for life. And therefore, it is very important that we work on relationships ourselves. Whenever it comes to careers, we work so much. Interviews, we work so much. We prepare so much. When it comes to looking out for university admissions or college admissions, we work so much. When it comes to applying visa, we work so much, We work so much for every aspect of our lives. But when it comes to relationships, it is assumed that you should be good at it. We don't work at all. We don't prepare ourselves at all. The question is, before we get into relationships, are we preparing ourselves enough? And therefore, when it comes to important relationships of life, we need to learn to prepare ourselves sufficiently to be able to handle these relationships effectively. So, I'll stop here at this point, and if there's any questions or comments you can take up, I'm sure there'll be loads of questions that you may have. So I thought I should give some time for having question answers. Yes?
What's the difference between pausing and suppressing the thoughts? You said we have to suppress the thoughts. We should not suppress the thoughts. And there is again pausing of without reacting. So
essentially, when I said suppress, that means when I said not suppress, that means you should express yourself completely, but you express in the right way. When I said pause, it essentially means for a moment, think about being grateful or what love has been deposited in the relationship. It's two different thought processes. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you
Yes.
for wonderful thoughts on the relationship. Now, you mentioned about the talent and attitude. And you also mentioned that talent cannot open the door to the success. Now, how exactly we have to understand? When you take the corporate life, for example, those are success.
I'm talking about door to success of relationships.
Relationships.
Yeah. See, because let me give you some examples from the corporate world if you want to know. There is something known as IQ, intellectual quotient. When people are hired into organizations, one of the first things that is tested is IQ, aptitude tests and all that. But today in the corporates, along with IQ tests, there is another test which is known as EQ test. EQ stands for emotional quotient. What does EQ represent? EQ represents your ability to handle pressure. EQ represents your ability to handle work in a team. EQ represents your attitude. That means to be successful today in the corporate world also, it's not enough to be highly intelligent. I know so many people who have passed out from highly qualified institutions, but they cannot work in a team. They tell very clearly, give me a job that I can do alone. Don't put me with somebody else. Because if you put that fellow with somebody else, there will be ego clashes. So there are some people who just cannot function with others. And the reason they cannot function with others is because they have intensely worked on their talents, but they have never worked on their attitudes. And because of that, talent can take you to one level of success. Beyond that level, you need good attitude also to be successful. That's what I meant. And especially when it comes to working with people, functioning in relationships, basically. Yes, Prabhuji. The back.
So you just said there are 5 different types of listening, and one of the type of listening was listening physically and mentally together. How do you enhance your mental listening while you are doing a physical listening?
So essentially, what I meant by doing both is what I call as empathic listening is the intellect needs to analyze words. The intellect is used to analyze words, but the heart is used to analyze feelings. So essentially, when we communicate with one another and when we listen to somebody else's words, don't just process intellectually. You also use your heart to try to understand what the other person is going through. Because not all the communication happens only with words. Certain aspect of communication happens with body language. Certain aspect of communication happens with tone. Certain aspect of communication happens just by looking at a person. And therefore, one of the reasons why these email and WhatsApp and all these communications fail is because you can't see the person. You can't see the body language of a person. And therefore, communication is incomplete when you only listen to words. So it's beyond that. That's what I meant by having empathic listening.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just a quick one. In relation to you showing that one thought of gratitude, I think that the story is perfect, but in most of our lives we have relationships with family members and close ones and long friends where we've been hurt many, many times. So how can we take so many things and drop them in a way? Can you give us some advice or guidance, please?
Yeah. See, many times when it comes to relationships, one of the things that people often feel is there's this question of right and wrong that always keeps coming up. When something happens, immediately we start analyzing, am I right or is that person right? When it comes to important relationships of life, we should never ask this question, right or wrong. Because in any aspect of life, there can be several rights and several wrongs. 2 people can be simultaneously right, and 2 people can be simultaneously wrong also, right? Now, from your perspective, you feel I am right and that person is wrong. But from the other person's perspective, that person may feel he is right and you are wrong. When it comes to relationships, the question that you should ask is not whose mistake it is. The question that you should ask is whose life it is. Let me give you an example. Suppose you are driving on a highway and there's a truck that is driving towards you. You are on the right side, on the right lane, everything is perfect from your side. And the truck comes completely on the wrong side. What do? Naturally, you adjust yourself and avoid banging the truck. Suppose the next truck comes also and exactly on the wrong side. What do? Again, you adjust yourself and go. Suppose the 20th truck comes, what will you do? You'll again adjust and go. Because the question that you ask when you're dealing with the limitations of traffic on the road is not whose mistake it is. The question is whose life it is. Suppose one fellow says, how many times I will have to adjust? Let that fellow adjust now, and that truck bangs you, and you end up in a hospital with your hands and leg fractured, and somebody comes and asks you, kya hua? You can't say, not my mistake, his mistake it was. I was on the right side. The question is not whose mistake it is. The question is whose life it is. When it comes to relationships also, there is a limitation of traffic on the road of relationships. The question that you should never ask, especially when it comes to important relationships of life, is not whose mistake it is. The question is whose life it is. I'll tell you, it is very easy to find faults and show this person's mistake, I am right. The question is, what do you achieve by it? If the relationship is important for you and it's practically your life, then adjust and go ahead. There's limitation of traffic on the road of relationships. Adjust and go ahead. Sometime in future, looking at the way you are dealing with it maturely, the other person may learn that. But even if that person doesn't learn that, for you, this relationship is your life. If it is your life, the question that you should ask is not whose mistake it is. The question that you should ask is whose life it is. That's my understanding. Yes. Yeah, this is the question.
This may not be something like a question, but what I heard earlier, I am telling, it may be relevant or may not be relevant. See, a boy and girl wanted to marry. They wanted to make a compatibility study before entering into marriage. So each one prepared their own checklist having 100 points. Then kept on observing and ticking them. Everything matched. They went to the registrar's office to get married. Immediately after the signature, the girl said, I am applying for divorce. What is the reason? All the 100 points are covered. Yes, but the boy's signature is longer than mine. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a signature comment.
Yes. So just a continuation of that previous question, that you said about the adjustment in the relationship, but don't you think that's got more susceptibility to get into the
exploitation?
Not exploitation, then suppression, because more you adjust, then what's happening is you are not expressing. Then when you're not expressing, then you're suppressing. So
when I'm saying adjust, doesn't mean don't speak it out. But speak it out in a way that is non-threatening. See, there is something known as non-violent communication. So our communication generally tends to be violent communication. So when I'm talking about expression and not suppression, I'm talking about communication that is non-violent. And the second thing, when I'm talking about adjustment, that is also a form of non-violent communication only. So essentially, what we need to do in our relationship, in the way we deal with one another, is communicate non-violently. Unfortunately, what we end up doing is, we communicate very violently. Aggression in our physical, behavior or actions, aggression in our words, aggression in our mood, the way we deal with one another. So the more there is aggression, the issue just enhances, it escalates. So what we need to approach it with a non-aggressive mood, basically. So the moment a person realizes that you are very sincere about the relationship, in spite of differences, we want the relationship to continue. So every conflict will help you understand one more thing to avoid. You understand? So conflict or confrontation or fights every fight has to help you understand one more thing about the other person. But if you end up keeping on doing the same mistakes or the same fights again and again, somewhere down the line, both of y'all or one of y'all haven't really worked on yourself. You get it? So if fights happen, it's good for a relationship. Because every fight leads you to a better understanding of the other person. It's not that fights are not supposed to happen. If fights don't happen, it's a boring family, you know. I always tell people that fights are a part of family life. Like, for example, I'm just giving you a scenario. Suppose you come home, ring the bell, you know, the son opens the door, very nicely dressed, you know. He's welcome daddy, you know. And then you go home, you go inside, the wife is, you know, really well decked up and, you know, nicely dressed up, everyday favorite items made, you know, and your children are extremely well behaved. The moment you go home and take off your clothes and throw it on the ground, somebody picks it up and puts it aside, you know, everything perfect. What do you think it looks like? It looks more like a hotel, right? Get down in a hotel, you know, somebody is opening the door, and somebody is saying, welcome sir, and the receptionist is always well dressed and smiling all the time, you know. How long can you live in a hotel? 1 week, 5 days. After that you get bored, right? Home means full-fledged movie. There must be some fight, there has to be some romance, there has to be some humor, there has to be some crying. They are all moods. There has to be some boring moments also, you know. That's what a family is. Essentially, a family is a place where you get to express all sorts of emotions, including fighting. But the only thing is, we shouldn't take the fights too seriously. We shouldn't take the fights too seriously. The moment you take the fight too seriously, then problems start. That means when a fight happens one day, the next day shamelessly one should come back together, you know. That is what a family is, basically, you know. If you start thinking about ego and who will go first and all that, you just cannot live in a family like that, you know. Shamelessly you have to come back together only again. According to me, family life is like a Telugu movie, you know. Telugu movies have a very typical pattern. It's called Oku Patu, Oku Fightu, you know. One fight, one song. One fight, one song. That's what a family life should be. Make sense? Don't take fights too seriously. That's the point.
Can I take another question?
Yes.
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
I have to say. This question is on curse. How can a human curse a supreme? And if it is planned, then how come, what it means?
Okay, this is a philosophical question. I'm going to switch gears. So, when it comes to Lord Krishna, in his, the curse that Gandhari gave was actually a pretext that Krishna used. So Krishna realized that he has come to establish dharma, and generally where there is great hoarding of power, there is a potential of adharma also prevailing eventually. So the threat that the Krishna had come to dissolve was Duryodhana and his company, because they were hoarding a lot of power and they were using it in the wrong means. Krishna realized that after he departs, after he goes back to the spiritual world, his own people, the Yadava Sena, the Yadu dynasty, they can become as bad as the Kauravas also, because they're Krishna's own children, Krishna's own family. Now who can handle them? So Krishna, when he was going back to the spiritual world, he wanted to put an end to the whole pastime of the Yadu dynasty. He used Gandhari as an instrument. So Gandhari, those words that came out from her mouth, were actually Krishna's, way of dealing with the Yadu dynasty also. That's the understanding. Yeah. Anyways, very grateful to all of you all for your patient listening and enthusiastic participation. Whatever I spoke today about relationships is hopefully some of this can help you all in your life. I can go on speaking on relationships for a few more hours. But I think what I've given is enough dose for you all to digest for a few years. So my humble request to all of you all is, whatever you heard today and whatever you tried to understand today, please discuss with one another. Because whatever principles I spoke, these are things that are very, very deep. And these are things that can, on a practical level, help you at various relationships that you are having. And when you churn them, when you discuss them, and especially with your family members, if they're all present here, it can actually help you enhance the quality of the relationships that you'll have with each other. And of course, if you'll have forgotten everything you heard today, no problem. The videos are there. And the videos are not there, the book is there. Whatever I spoke is based on open-eyed meditations as it is. Unfortunately, we couldn't get copies of open-eyed meditations here, but it will come at some point in future. But if it doesn't come also, Amazon is always there. But it has really been a pleasure. For me, one of the things that I do wherever I travel, especially, is I speak on relationships. Because I see that every devotee community across the world, wherever I have gone, there's an intense struggle on relationship level. Especially when communities grow to a certain extent, Initial phase, there's no problem, because everybody is new, But once you actually know each other quite well and a relationship develops for a certain period of time, that's where all the problems start. So for thriving communities, one of the challenges is always going to be relationships. Therefore, I personally prefer to speak on this topic at least once. So with this, we come to the end of today's session. Tomorrow's session is going to be on Hanumanji. Please be ready for some really exciting and adventurous stories of Hanumanji. But more than exciting adventure stories, it's all going to be things that you can relate to in your personal lives. What you can learn as a devotee from Hanumanji's life. That's what we're going to speak about. And there are some stories that you would have never ever heard in your life before. There are some stories you would have heard before, but you would have never understood it in this way. So Hanumanji is a very versatile and dynamic personality, and I'm sure you will be excited about it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.